So I'd also very much like to welcome everybody here. A really, really warm welcome to Gaia House and to this retreat. And especially if you're new, if this is your first time, I really hope that you can really feel how very, very welcome you are here, and that communicates. And just listening to Chris speaking so beautifully, and it's funny teaching so much and living here, and it could be easy to take all this for granted, and listening to Chris and the reminder of what's actually obvious to me, but if you're new, may not be obvious to you, of just how much goodness there is here. This is, as Chris said, it's a safe place. There's goodness, there's generosity, there's kindness saturating everything that this place is about. And that's something really precious in this world, really precious. Feels to me quite rare. And so I feel very privileged to be here, and privileged to be with you in this retreat, in this space of kindness, a space of generosity, space of safety. There's a preciousness and a privilege to all of that. And just so there's preciousness and privilege to this whole movement that we're undertaking together, to be on retreat. And I wonder, I hope that it's possible to have a sense that you're coming here and you're being here and you're choosing to be here is a gift that you're giving to yourself. So easy to overlook that. And can you see this is something absolutely beautiful that we are giving to ourselves. And through giving it to ourselves, we are giving it to the world. It's a gift of kindness, and actually that's all that practice is, ultimately speaking. Kindness to ourselves and kindness to the world, in the deepest possible sense. And can I feel that? Can I let that in? Can I open to that perspective of what practice is? And when I relate to meditation, to being on retreat, to practice, to whatever, it's rooted in that perspective. It's so easy, it goes into something else. It's about self-improvement or something. We lose touch with that underpinning of what all this is really about. And then there is this ancient tradition, probably, almost definitely I would say, the tradition of going on retreat, putting oneself in a different environment, is probably older than history. It goes back to prehistory, pre-written records, certainly. So this is something that human beings have been doing from day one. Lost in the mists of time, this impulse, this movement, feeling called to lay the busyness aside for a period and to quieten, to let things quieten for a time, and possibly to open to something else, possibly. Maybe to answer the calling of what we feel might be possible for ourselves in this existence, even if I don't know what that is. I just sense that something else is possible. And to ask very deep questions of life and of existence. So all this has been going on since before anyone even remembers. Now, I'm aware, and I put that out, and already we're in dangerous territory. Already that's complicated, and I don't know if you can sense that. Probably lands, just what I've just said, in different places in this hall. We're 70-something people in here. So how did that land? How does it land hearing that about this time together? What's my relationship with this whole idea of being on retreat? And this whole idea of making a container like that. maybe more importantly, what is a helpful way for me to relate to this idea of being on retreat? That's a probably more important question. What's a helpful way for me to relate to this idea of being on retreat? So, very often as human beings, it's really helpful to sanctify something, to make something holy, to set it apart, and then step into that, to create something in our relationship with something. That can be extremely potent and important for us. And sometimes it's really important to not make things special. So, which? What? Special or not special? What's helpful? What's helpful? Do I know myself enough? So if I'm making this special, if my heart and my eyes and my relationship with all this is to sanctify it, to make it special, to make it holy, then it's now I'm entering something tonight. Now here's a sacred space. Here is this crucible, this adventure that I'm walking into. Here is my time of dedication, my time of surrendering, my time of searching. I give myself to that searching. And it's not special at all. Life goes on. We'll be sitting and walking and shuffling around and eating and going to the toilet and sleeping and eating again and listening and being quiet. Because sometimes we make things special in a way that's not helpful for us. So I don't know. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Sometimes I need to not make something special because I get hold of the whole idea of retreat and meditation practice in a way that just ties me in knots. And sometimes I really need to make something special. So earlier today, in a group interview, a retreatant was pointing out something which I think a lot of people are aware of, who do perhaps many retreats, that being on retreat, being in an environment like this, with the silence, with practice, etc., there can be, and there often is for people, a kind of falling away of what is not so important in my life. The kind of entanglements and complexities and worries and things we get caught up in our life that actually somehow they take a lot of our time and energy, but they're not actually at the most, at the deepest of what's most important to us. And there can be, over time, a falling away of that. It's a real gift. It's such a precious thing. And that gets quiet. That mud settles. And as it's settling, other aspirations perhaps, or perhaps what we feel more deeply, what's more central to our being, more loved, more core, that begins rising up and showing itself as this other stuff falls away. Our longing, our deepest longing, our deepest aspirations. And again, it cannot but be with 70 people or 75 in the room. It cannot but be that, again, using those words, it's complex, lands in different places. So this word longing can be very loaded, or it could go in fine. Personalities are very different. We are very different beings, and we should be. So some people, the language of longing, the movement of longing is very present in their life, and they can really relate to that. Other people may not even relate to that word. When I say longing, if I'm using that language, I don't just mean a feeling. Longing is in a way deeper than the feeling of longing. And I'm aware it's Friday night. And for a lot of you it's been a work week. It certainly has for me. A lot of busyness. It's the end of the week, there's tiredness, etc., trying to get here. And then suddenly this guy's speaking about your deepest longing. So for some people I know it's going right in and it's touching, and other people it's just, I'm sorry, I just can't relate right now. All of that's okay. All of that's okay. And it's also okay that we have different personalities in relationship to this word longing and this whole movement of longing. All that's okay. But I just want to say linger on it a little bit. Because I also wonder, despite the difference in personalities and despite the fact that it is the end of a work week for many people, I wonder in this culture if we've lost the language of longing. Do you know what I mean? Does the culture support that deepest movement of being in us? I saw a wonderful film a few weeks ago. It's called Pina. I don't know if anyone saw it. Did anyone see this? Absolutely amazing. It's about Pina Bausch. She died a couple of years ago. She was a sort of avant-garde choreographer and working with a troupe. Is that the right word? Troupe? A troupe of ballet dancers over many years. And at one point she asked her dancers, she says, what are you longing for? What are you longing for? You see the passion they put into working on their art. Incredible dedication. She says, what are you longing for? And where does all this yearning come from? And she asked them this. And what was so striking is how rare it was to hear that kind of language. I don't think the culture supports that. We've lost it. We've lost that discourse. We've lost that connection. We don't speak to each other that way. And so it's a bit embarrassing maybe when someone says that. Or I just can't connect. I don't know. And if I've lost my longing, or if that feels a little awkward, how is it that that's come about? How is it that that's happened in my life? It's not my fault if it's happened. It's probably not my fault. It's probably the culture's fault, I would say. And very hard to talk about this stuff without it landing in the inner critic and someone's maybe thinking, oh, now I should have this longing, which I don't feel. Maybe there's something wrong with me and I'm not good enough. No. I just want to raise something that has nothing to do with judging oneself or where I should be or anything like that. But maybe it's more of an open question. What do I want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want in life? What do I want in life? What do I want or you want in this week now? And that's a question of love. It's a question of kindness. So different, rather than something to judge myself with, what would it be to take care of my longing? In this life, that I'm taking care of my longing. That's not a demand. It's not a should. It's something about loving ourselves deeply. So, longing, wanting, aspiration, desire, all these concepts, really, they're a double-edged sword. They're a double-edged sword, and I'm sure that's actually part of the difficulty that we have with them. Part of the sometimes hesitation, deep hesitation we have to relate deeply or inquire deeply into our deep longing is because it's a double-edged sword. If I have a deep desire and a big aspiration, high aspiration, that's going to be painful for me. It cannot not be painful. To long is to experience the pain of longing. It's also to experience the beauty of longing. And the very force of that longing might open something up. Because it's energy and it's powerful. But there will be pain with it. If I don't go near that, and if I always stay close to a very modest aspiration, and not really using this language of longing, well, that too is a double-edged sword. Because maybe there's then not enough energy in the being to discover something, maybe. Or something else, curious actually. It might be if my aspiration isn't high enough, that the little stresses of every day are actually bigger. They're bigger, they take up more of my whole picture of life. Whereas if I have a bigger aspiration, the little stresses are smaller in that. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah? Anyway, longing changes. What we want changes, and it evolves, and it should, which is wonderful. Well, I remember first starting meditation, and years ago, I was in university, and I saw a poster for a meditation class, and something, and I thought that looks cool. I thought what I was interested in was calming and concentrating the mind, and I was, but it turned out to be about 1% of what I really wanted, and so that evolves. That evolves over time. But I say all that, and it's like, let it be. What are you here for? It's not about me and what I think or anything like that. It's what are you here for? And can you respect what you are here for? It's not my answer, it's your answer. Can you really respect and love what you are here for, whatever that is? Can you open to asking what you're here for and to the answers that might come? Because they're yours, they're not mine, and they shouldn't be mine. Okay, so I want to speak a little bit also just about the practices and the teachings that we'll be exploring this week. Slightly unusual retreat, this. It wasn't in the description, but you're here now, so I'll tell you. It's not a metta retreat, by the way. A lot of people seem to think it was metta retreat, so I hope you won't be disappointed by that. I don't think you will be. What we're going to be exploring in the practice is working with the emotional life. Okay, working with the emotions that come up in the being, and different approaches to working with them. Working with the emotional life in helpful ways. That's what we're looking for. So that in that one is really caring for oneself and caring for one's life. And you think, if you just pause just right here and ask oneself, how much of human suffering comes in relationship to my emotions, and in relationship of not being quite in the possession of full ability, skill, capacity to handle well, to work with well my emotions. So that's the starting point. How important that is for us as human beings. But it's interesting. So we're going to, in a way, kind of be doing one approach as a starting point. One approach to the emotional life. I wouldn't even say that the approach that we're doing on this retreat is certainly not the only approach that we could take to working with our emotions. Absolutely not. Definitely not. But it's one, and it's what we'll be doing. So I just want to really put that in the context. It's also, I wouldn't even say, the best approach. I don't even think there is a best approach. It's just what we'll be doing. Okay? And I'm pretty confident that it will be helpful. Because when we think or reflect on emotionality and our capacity as human beings to know and feel and experience our emotions, I don't think we will ever exhaust the ways of looking at emotions, the ways of understanding human emotionality. There's so many different takes on that we can have. So, there are brain scientists and people who understand why we have emotions in terms of evolution and all that, and that's completely valid. That's one angle. Freud would say something about why certain emotions arise and what they're da-da-da. Jung broke with Freud, said something very different. Modern psychoanalytic, is so many different traditions there, all with different perspectives, different something to say. And then the spiritual traditions and others, etc. Each of these reveal or will reveal something different about human emotionality. They will all kind of shine a different light and reveal something different. And they will all allow the experience or encourage the experience of emotions to unfold in different ways. And so that's what we're doing. We're shining a certain light to reveal something in particular, some things in particular. And out of that, it tends to unfold in particular ways. I can never get to the bottom of understanding human emotionality in toto because it's part of the infinite mystery, the fathomless depth of the psyche. It's impossible. It's impossible. Buddhism can't. Neither can a particular school of psychoanalysis or anything. I just can't. It's impossible. So I'm aware in terms of practice that that's unusual, or it may be unusual. Usually one would come on retreat and probably start with breath practice or metta practice. So we're not doing that. We've got a different approach. Please don't think of it as advanced. It's not advanced. It's not even any more difficult than the breath or the metta. It's just different. It's just a different way in. In terms of the unfolding of the meditation instructions, they won't be linear, but we kind of have to take our time saying stuff, so we can't say everything at once. But it won't be linear, so it's almost like getting different pieces and different angles or different pieces of a jigsaw over the days. So it might get to day 4 and I'll say something and you'll say, well, I wish you'd said that on day 1, for heaven's sake. But that for someone else, it was really right to hear it on day 4, and etc. So we do what we can, we take it in pieces, and the whole thing kind of makes a mandala which supports the whole process. But I also want to talk on this retreat in terms of practice, on the relationship with practice, because that feels really important to me. What's my relationship with meditation practice? So often we bring to it ideals that are not helpful. Ideals and images of what meditation is or should be. So for example, I shouldn't have thoughts. I should be abiding in a calm, thought-free space. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm not doing it right. I shouldn't be distracted, etc. Well, certainly it's possible to be without thought, absolutely, no question. And maybe that will even happen, maybe on this retreat. But that's not the point. That's really not the point of what we're trying to do at all. And it might be, and it probably will be, that you have thoughts most of the time. That you have thoughts most of the time when you're meditating. And you know what? That's absolutely no problem at all. It's completely not a problem. It might actually even be helpful. Will you remember this for 7 days? Maybe write it down, because this is really important. How much suffering we cause ourselves because of our image of what we think meditation should be. So a question, what am I trying to do when I meditate? What are we trying to do? What's this all about? What am I trying to do? And am I setting up a problem for myself with it? I would say, in answer to that question, what am I trying to do? We are exploring and developing ways of seeing experience and ways of relating to experience. We're exploring and developing ways of seeing and relating to experience that lead to freedom and to understanding. And that's what meditation is, not anything else apart from that. It's a different way of seeing it. So I'm really, and we will start on this retreat with emotions as the starting point of this learning different ways of seeing that unfold freedom and understanding. And what we really want for this retreat is that what we learn here in terms of meditation is transferable. It's usable, especially in terms of emotions. You can be walking down the street and something happens, you can just check in and work with it skillfully right there, quick, like that. I don't have to
get in a pretzel position and all this stuff. It's right there, quick. That's what I would like to do. We would like to offer. It's portable. So that there is skill and confidence in relationship to my emotional life, confidence in relationship to what comes up in me as a human being. And that's often the piece that's missing with emotions. I don't feel confident. I feel, yikes, what if I feel this? What if X or Y emotion comes up and I feel overwhelmed or whatever? So a lot of this is, can we move towards a place of actually complete confidence in relationship to our emotional life? So that for me is what meditation is. It's not about being in the moment. I'm not particularly interested in that. It's not about being present. It's not about being open. It's not about being with what is ultimately. Those are all kind of helpful ways of looking at it, certainly. But they can also be dead ends. If I'm too tight around seeing that's what meditation is, it's about being in the moment. It's about being present with what is. That can actually be a dead end. And make a mistake about what reality is. And we'll talk more about this. So, in the instructions that will be at 9:30 in the morning, and in the meetings that we have, we'll talk about how that works, the meeting with Chris and myself over the days. What we are really interested in the instructions and the meetings, is meeting you where you are in your experience of the moment. And that you can learn more and more to do that too, and do that really in a helpful way. Every evening there will also be a talk, a Dharma talk in the evening. It will be approximately an hour, maybe a little less, maybe a little longer. Okay. And in addition to meeting you, actually in the Dharma talks, what we're really interested in as well is kind of exploring the framework of what we're doing, conceptually as well. So Chris and I have had several conversations leading up to this retreat, and we decided to kind of split it into a little bit, not so black and white. And Chris was given an assignment to kind of lay out the Buddhist map of the territory, the Buddhist conceptual framework of how the path works and what we're trying to do and where we're going. And that takes time to digest. It takes time to understand that and to really kind of help use that to help give one's bearings. It takes time to consolidate that. So that's a really, really important part of what we want to explore. I was given a different assignment slightly, which is to stretch things at the edges. And to question things, and to challenge you, in fact, and myself. So every time, when I say challenge, I also mean challenge myself, and question, I also mean question myself, and stretch, I also mean stretch myself. And so some of what goes in the talks might be a little subtle in terms of the ideas involved, might be complex, might be difficult, maybe. And we're not just interested in the now, how you feel during that hour when one of us is talking. I'm not just interested in that hour. I'm not interested in you having a pleasant hour of listening to one of us talk. I mean, I hope you do, but that's not the primary interest. It may not even be right where you are at this moment. And so, certainly with the talks, and I think I've always thought about talks this way, it probably will really pay to re-listen in the evening talks. There'll be quite a lot in them. So we have this heart, and that's important, and we have ideas, we have a head too. The Dharma is said to be, it addresses suffering, it addresses dukkha. So this word dukkha, D-U-K-K-H-A, means suffering, dissatisfaction. What does suffering need in my life? What does it need? And sometimes what it needs is heart, and we're talking a lot about that on this retreat. It needs the heart to open, to soften, to bring forth compassion, to relate differently. And I talk a lot about that when I teach, a lot about the heart's relationship with suffering, because it's so crucial. But I would also say something extra. What does suffering need? It needs the heart, but it also needs to engage my intellect and my imagination. Suffering needs to engage my intellect and my imagination. Very often as Buddhists, we tend to leave those things out. Imagination, what on earth could that have to do with it? And intellect. And by those, I don't mean imagining what I could do with this problem or having a bright idea about a possible solution. I mean my ideation and my whole way I'm imagining a whole myself and the whole scenario. We'll talk more about this. The ideas, I think, this is one of the things I want to emphasize now because it will run through the retreat a little bit and pick it up. An idea, a concept, a view that I have, it doesn't just exist up here. It has enormously powerful effects psychologically and on my heart, on my eyes. It has an enormous influence on the way I see things. Going back to what I said earlier, Dharma practice is practicing, developing ways of seeing, and that comes out of ideas and concepts. They don't just stay up here. Actually, I think we're always in the grasp of some idea or concept or view or other. We're always in the grasp of it. So it's not abstract. If we talk about ideas in the evenings, it's not abstract at all. We're talking about what actually is gripping my heart, gripping my sense of existence, my sense of self, gripping the way I see. I may not be aware of that. So we're also interested in, someone put it, unwrapping the unconsciousness that surrounds ideas. That's really, really key. And sometimes that's a little troublesome, isn't it? It's a little, it can feel like there's a rub with that. There's a conflict even. Heraclitus was a pre-Socratic philosopher. I don't even know when he lived, thousands of years ago. Actually, a lot of people more recently regard him as the first real psychologist or the first psychoanalyst in a way. He's not so much a philosopher. There's a real deep understanding of consciousness and the psyche. And he said, polemos, the Greek polemos, which we get our word polemic from, which means strife. Polemos is the father of all things. So, no rub, no fruit. And even Buddhist ideas, sometimes we don't see how we're wrapping contemporary assumptions around that. And in the Buddha's time they wrapped, and he did too, his contemporary assumptions around that. So all this feels very important, and we will be going into it. You will experience calm on this retreat. You definitely will. I was going to say, I promise, is that wise? You will. But we're not into quietism. In other words, that's really not the main point. Retreat is also about questioning deeply, really questioning deeply. And sometimes that questioning deeply brings agitation. It brings agitation to the being. And that's uncomfortable, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a blessing. So I don't know. It may be in some of the evening talks, it may feel a little dense. It may feel like it's too much, too many ideas. What happens to me if I don't understand something completely? Well, that's important. But it may be that for some of the evening talks that you come with a different attitude to, there's a different thing going on and you bring a different attitude. And if you really don't like it, it's just an hour about. And it's really not that much out of your day and your week. And like I say, we'll probably pay repeated listenings. That's why Yuha is doing the taping here and it will all be on the web.
Thank you for listening. To learn how you can support the teachers and Dharma Seed, please visit dharmaseed.org. intellect.org.